Working class family, worked hard and started earning money myself by washing cars and cleaning windows just to get my own pocket money, to buy my mum and dad a tumble dryer. I had £12 a week. I want local Currys in Tonbridge, £10 every week I'd put on there for 20 weeks to be able to buy this tumble dryer because I wanted them to feel good. I've always had an innate ability to want other people to feel good.
I am delighted that my guest today is someone who I've wanted to be a guest for so long, for so many reasons. It's Dame Kelly Holmes. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good to speak to you finally.
Yes. No, I really, really appreciate it because I've followed you for so many years. And I told you just before we did this, I watched the 800 and the 1500 in 2004, the Olympics. And what was so amazing for me was about that is because I'd followed your whole, well, not your career as an athlete, not your whole career, as a soldier in the British Army, but I just remember always wanting you to win and always being so upset when you didn't because of injury, right? It was always injury. And I can remember so clearly thinking that I didn't think you were going to win. I just thought, no, history is going to repeat itself, but it didn't, obviously. And it was just awesome. I mean, do you still feel proud of your achievements, or is it just a distant memory now?
No, I do feel proud. And I probably, as time goes on, feel even prouder of that outcome because of when you start to talk to people about a journey and you talk to people, especially in society generally, who are, trying to achieve their ultimate goals, set their visions, set their targets and give up or find it really hard to keep going. And if you can pass on the message about that journey not being, an easy ride for lots of different ways, and then actually, as I'm talking to people, the realization of what it actually took from me to get to that, I think becomes even more empowering, both for me to know that you can transition that to other things, but also to pass that on and that message to people.
Because when I look at you now, you look younger than you did then. I mean, you really do. There's something about
you. I love you.
But it's true. I mean, people must tell you that, right? That you just look like you're getting younger. And that's kind of one of the things that I would love to discuss with you. Your career is so fascinating in terms of what you've been through, which you've publicly said so much of this, and what you went through and how you felt about yourself, the self-harming, the depression. But I suppose when we focus on the thing I love about you is the fact that you really are reinventing yourself. You have not stopped. I don't think I've met anyone who's so inspired about inspiring others. It's like you have an obsession with that. And because when I heard you speak, when we did that thing on Clubhouse, I was going, wow, you really, really want to help other people. Why is that? I mean, it might sound obvious, but I'm really curious. What is it about you that makes you so obsessed about helping other people achieve and move on in their life?
I feel like through all different things that I've had in my life, sort of, I get people's struggles in different ways. I have empathy for people. And also I feel that there's a lot of people in life that, just never reach their full potential. And being somebody that when I set myself a goal, it really affects me emotionally if I don't feel like I can achieve it. And it's just something that I've had all my life. When I was younger at school, and I think it comes a lot from your past, lots of things that go on and that might not even spoken about and not ready to speak about yet, but there's things in your past that if they were so instrumental in the way that you thought about yourself, you can't just get rid of those. So an example of that is being at school, not being the academic one, really feeling like you were the odd one out for so many reasons, and finding something that just made me feel so good about myself. But then having a person, and I know it's so easy to say, oh, one person inspired me, but I think when you're younger, you can go two ways. You can either ignore what people say because you're young and you kind of don't care and you're not got it, or something that somebody says to you can just embed and be so instrumental in your thinking. Mine was my PE teacher. And as much as I can say, and we're a friend now, having just somebody, I don't know what it was, but even though she was a PE teacher, it was almost like that belief in me that I could be someone. And when somebody told me you can be good, but you have to want it, you've got to work hard to get it, and you've got to believe you're going to do it. You know, that I just had that. I held on to somebody giving me that positivity. And obviously that set then me on my, you know, my journey in athletics. But I remembered that so much that when I started my charity, the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust, it was all about that I believe one person can make a huge impact and difference to somebody if you give them a bit of time of day, if you give them a bit of, you know, motivation behind them, a bit of inspiration, and also guide them in their mindset. And I think so many people in society just need that one person.
Yeah.
I'm not just that one person. There's so many like yourself and other people, but I have it in me to want to get the best out of someone.
It's beautiful. I think you're obviously quite fortunate to have that. But you were 14 years old, right? When I watched your TED talk, and I've actually heard you speak before. I've heard you speak many times. It's always learn something from you. I always feel inspired that I want to take something from you that I can apply to my life to make me better, and then I want to pass that on. I don't know where I got that from, but I'm obsessed with it. So in terms of kind of when you were 14 years old, right? That's when you had this idea of joining the army, right? Because you're from Kent, aren't you? And
I am, yes, born and bred in Kent, made at Kent.
I was made in Sussex. I've got to tell you that, you know, I asked you that thing the other day about Sally Gunnell, how Sally Gunnell affected your life. Sally Gunnell changed my life. I mean, literally, like you wouldn't believe. I used to live in London. I used to go and see her in Sussex, her and Jonathan Big. And I said to her one day, I said, you know what, Sally, I'm sick of living in London. And she just looked at me and went, move. So I did. I moved just down the road from her and lived just like one village away for 4 years. And she was very like that in terms of wanting to give back and inspire other people. But if we go back to you when you were 14, you said you had a dream of joining the army. When you say you had a dream, what did that mean? Did that mean you could actually envisage yourself being in the army?
Yeah, so 14 had a big impact on me. And, you know, again, I feel very fortunate that I was that type of person that had these real intense feelings about what I wanted to do. So the athletics came, but also the army. So we had careers officers come round to our school. And at that time, again, not being someone that engaged very well in the academic learning, it was almost that became a physical attribute of mine that I could see myself doing. So when they showed me the videos of the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army, you know, the Air Force, they were just showing people in a, you know, in an office kind of, you know, doing administration, and sort of that went straight over my head. And then they showed Navy, the ships at sea, and I couldn't swim when I was 14. So I was like, no, that's not going to happen. And then what it was about the army is they showed the physical training instructors literally screaming and shouting at the soldiers. But what engaged me in both of those things was the discipline of the soldiers kind of just doing what they were told, but also the physical aspect of it, you know, scramble nets and 12-foot walls, but then also somebody being in charge and telling them. So I wanted to be both. I wanted to be the one like screaming and shouting basically, and the one getting down dirty is what I say in a lot of my talks. But it was more the fact of the real piece around that was a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and also a career that I could see myself fulfilling, as opposed to what else was I going to do. And I was actually working at the time. A lot of people know that my first actual real job was a nursing assistant for people with, well, I suppose we call it now mental and physical disabilities. We called that so nice back then. And I always had the thing of, again, helping people, but then wanting to be someone, you know, and I then decided to join the army.
So when you said about purpose, what did that actually mean? You wanted to have purpose, or did you get a sense of purpose being in the army?
Yeah, definitely. Just being someone, you know, proving maybe to myself first and foremost, but just maybe my vision of people not believing in me. I don't know why that always became that, but just a sense of, if I have a career, I can prove to myself I can be good.
Yeah.
You know, without anybody else telling me, I could prove to myself I could be good. And going in the army, you grow up very quickly. There's obviously a very big disciplinary and type environment.
Yeah.
But expectations are met there and then. You have to do what they said. But I saw myself growing through that process and wanting to get, kind of promoted so that I can feel that I'm always achieving. And that's been something that's always been in my mind.
So that whole thing of achieving to wanting to prove to yourself that you were somebody, right? Which I think is a driver for I think so many people. I can definitely relate to that. Do you think you've transcended that now? Do you think you've gone beyond that? Like you don't really, do you feel like now you don't really need to prove yourself to anybody anymore?
Yeah, I don't feel like I need to prove myself to anybody, but I still have an inner desire to prove to myself that I can still
Yeah, yeah,
things.
yeah. See, I think that, as my background in psychology, that's the thing I think you've done so well. You went through this huge up and down journey to then fulfill one of your dreams. And it's like what Maslow, who was like the forefather of psychology, said, that what man can be, he must be. We must be the best we can be. And then when we've done that, we must go transcend that and move on to something else.
Yeah.
And that's probably why you look younger, because it's almost like you're living another life. That life, it's still with you and you're proud of it. And everyone who knows you is inspired, but people who don't even know you, who hear your story. But let's look at the athletics. When did you first realize, oh, I can run really fast? How old were you when you kind of really worked? I mean, did you always love running, or was it just, tell me about that. How did you come across it?
So again, at school with the PE teacher. So basically, with sports days, you kind of either engage with it or you don't you? And
Yeah.
sports days, I just felt like it came alive, because I just loved it. One, because it wasn't in the classroom, and secondly, I just naturally was good at it. And I was beating these girls that were like 2 years older than me. They kept putting me in the races with girls that were above me, and that was the first time that I would say my own identity was met. Because instead of being the naughty kid that all sat out of a classroom, people wanted to be in my team. Kelly was the girl that everybody wanted to be either not race against or to be with in their team. So it gave me a sense of empowerment, and I took that, in a good way, that I was good. So again, I was then, the school's process is good in athletics because you represent your school, you go to your county champ. So I was Kent county champion. Then, if you become Kent schools champion and get selected for the English schools championships, that's the biggest you can ever get to as a school kid. So I went basically 6 months after I lost my first ever, but this is what happened. I was encouraged to do a cross country race and I didn't want to do it. And the reason is that I just didn't want to do a cross country race. And I was pretty much forced, you've got to do what you're told, right? As a pupil. Yeah. So I'm on the bus, we go to the school, and my teacher said, just run. So I ended up running and I came second to this girl, but it's not that whole point. It was the feeling that I got when I came second. I hated it.
Yeah.
And it was the only feeling that I'd had in my life where I hated something. I didn't care with other things, but I hated it.
That's fascinating. You know that there's a phenomenon about that.
Right.
Did you know that?
No.
With athletes who come second.
Yeah.
That for some of them, it gives them a fuel that they never, ever want to feel that again. And for others, it was the same. That was the same for Sally in 91. When she would 2 hurdles left and looked down and realized, oh, I could win this. And then kind of hit the hurdle and came second.
Oh.
And that was the fuel that made her go and get some help from, what's his name? The guy that won in 68.
Oh God,
David Henry.
David Henry.
Yeah. And then David said, do you ever visualize the race? You've probably heard the story. And Sally goes, well, sometimes, but I don't always see myself winning. Mm-hmm. And then David said, listen, you got to think about this a lot, and then I was really fortunate because when Sally retired, she'd never done public speaking. And first 2 or 3 events I did with her. And the second was in Barcelona. Mm-hmm. And she'd never been back. And I was there with her and Jonathan, and they wouldn't let her go on the track. And I was going, do not know who this is. But you probably remember the race in 93 because Sally got so good at visualizing. When she crossed the line in 93, she didn't know that she'd won, and she didn't know that she'd broken the world record. Where were you when you saw that? Where were you in 93? Were you there?
I was sitting in that stadium, which is ironic because, I was so new to international senior athletics then, but, she was Olympic champion, and, you're watching British hero, win again. Yeah, amazing, amazing.
How much did you get inspiration from other people like that?
I was inspired into the Olympic movement by watching Sebastian Coe.
I saw that 1980. Was that 84 as well?
84, yeah.
Yeah.
So, kind of, I think what was the inspiration, because of course it wasn't about a man or a woman winning, it was about somebody doing something that a lot of people would think's impossible, and you see them cross the line, it's possible. It's a British person, didn't matter whether it's man or woman, it's a British person in an event that I used to run, winning, and I'm at home at school, in school holiday, and the Olympic movement is so big and has a big impact on people from all different ways.
Yeah.
For me, having been a 1500 meters champion, having been English schools champion, then watching this Olympic thing, that was just it. Oh yeah, I was just like, oh, I want to do that. And I tell the story all the time, like literally I went from being in school holidays, going back to school, telling my best friends, Kerry, Lara and Kim, who are still my best friends to this day, that I'm going to be Olympic champion. And I've always said exactly what they said to me, is that, yes, you probably are, because it's the only bloody thing you're good at. Hence why I believed I was just good at running. And this is the thing, you get, I think, I've noticed is with young people in particular, when somebody says something like that, they take it as a negative. Whereas I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna show you I can do it.
Yeah.
If you have an inner burning desire, and not through arrogance, but through what it makes you feel, I just felt goosebumps like literally over my body, and I was so empowered with seeing that success that that's what I wanted.
But what's so fascinating about you, of all the athletes I've ever seen, I mean, I don't think many of them went through what you went through. I mean, the injuries that you had, and you were all, you were the one who was going to win. They'd all say you're going to win, right? And then it just seemed like, no. And then Athens, it was like, no, I actually kind of remember people saying it's not going to happen. History is going to repeat itself, but it didn't. It really didn't. But let's just go back. So just when you came second to that girl, did that really hurt you and just think, I'm not going to let that ever happen again? I'm going to win.
It's just something that came over me that I just hated the pit in my stomach. And, I just wanted to
never experience. Did you want to never experience that again? Or did you just want to, why? I'm fascinated by that.
Because I really loved running, and it was just empowering to me. The thought of losing in that moment was almost like, I want to be better, because I love the feeling of running. So by losing, I really, again, people when they lose can just go, oh, I'm not good enough. Whereas I was thinking, I hated feeling that I could have won, or actually it almost as though running meant so much to me as that young girl, that I didn't want to feel I wasn't good at it, because it felt like the only thing I was good at.
Yeah. But what's fascinating also is that it's almost like you had to get to where you got to eventually win, for somehow then working out now what I can do. Because come on, you're pretty good at a whole load of things now, right? With your different businesses and your interests, and building teams of people around you. Yeah, it's funny what we're told and what we believe. So, I mean, look, we could talk about this forever, but people can go and people can go and find out for themselves and look at what you've done. But just tell us, what was that like for you? Just kind of competing and going to Olympic Games and getting injured, and did you still always have that fire in your belly? Like, well, I'm still, even with that, how did you manage the disappointment and the setbacks?
I think so. I've always been into how do you change your mindset quickly, and even back then, I think I've completely, grown and learnt lots of things in life generally. But there was a point when I went to my first Olympic Games when I was 26 years old, and I'd already been in the army for a few years, so I'd grown. I had become a lot stronger as a person, as a woman, and I'd seen results. I'd won a Commonwealth Games gold medal and a European silver and 2 World Championship medals, and yet I was juggling that with a full-time career. And what happened is when I went to my first Olympic Games, I ended up running with a stress fracture.
Yeah.
And the immediate disappointment of coming fourth, getting picked on the line, the immediate disappointment of that was just so overpowering. I hated it. I couldn't believe. But there was something that happened when I came back to the UK, and I went back to my army barracks, and I'm on crutches, and people were saying, you know, how did you run with a stress fracture? Like, was it possible? I ran 6 races, people forget, with a stress fracture, and got into the finals and came fourth by 10th of a second. And I just thought to myself then, it's like anything's really impossible. It was kind of, instead of having the emotional, because I had the emotional pain, the emotional upset.
Yeah.
It's almost like I said to myself, like, if you can come, like, in the, you know, my sport was Olympic level. That's the world's best people going. Yeah, I'm coming in with such a kind of almost like setback, both emotionally and physically, but I can be up there with the best.
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah.
my mindset, it's like,
I can do this.
I must be all right. You know, I kind of just changed into that, because the upset and the disappointment was too much to wallow in.
You had to do something with it.
Yeah. Because otherwise I would have just.
That's powerful. That is.
It really is. I mean,
anyone can do that though, right?
Anyone can do it if they choose to do it, because it's very easy to fall into the hurt and the disappointment and the setbacks and the you know, the negative side of anything we do when we hit rock bottom or where we hit a brick wall. It's so easy to go into that, but we all know that easy isn't an option if you want to get somewhere. You know, you have to work hard. So it was almost that, maybe because of my army background, I had that kind of tenacity, that resilience, a bit of
never give up.
And that was the most empowering part of my story, because that is what I always lived by all the way through my career. Is if I hit a rock bottom, or if I hit a setback, or I hit a barrier, whether that was a personal thing or a you know, physical thing, how do I change my mindset into what did I get out of it, and what can I do with that thought going forward?
So what about kind of some of the lowest points? Because was it in going towards Athens that you really got into a depression, right?
Yeah. I mean, so 33 years old, I mean, you think you're kind of sorted, and having been in international athletics then, and in the military for nearly 10 years, you kind of think that you're quite robust. However, yeah, do you know what? A combination, I think this is what people have to understand, accumulation of emotional impacts, as well as fighting all the time. You know, I was always like this, you know, loggerheads with emotions and disappointments to absolute belief I could do something. And that's a real hard thing to compute. And, you know, when you get to a point, I had a breakdown, become depressed, which then got diagnosed with clinical depression, and became a self-harmer in what was perceived to be a split second of lots. But on reflection and looking at it, it's obviously a build-up of that.
Well, self-harming, I mean, everyone's different, but that can be just so much frustration, and you just want to get it out. There's something you just got to get it out. And the way you describe the way you living your life, it wasn't surprising that a lot of frustration was there, and probably other stuff as well. But I'm so curious as to how you've moved. You wouldn't say you suffer from depression now?
Well, I've not right at this moment, no. Since retiring, have I? Yes.
Yeah.
Anxiety, stress, was a self-harm. I mean, the last time I self-harm was the day my mother passed away. Yeah. Because that was literally the worst day of my life. Out of anything I've had, breakdowns, whatever, that was the worst day of my life personally. But I also then cut myself, and then I also, with the mindset that I've got as around how do I quickly flip it to something else, was she hasn't got her life to live. All I'm doing is hurting my life and stopping me doing things, because I've got to not do that. And it was just that split thing. Up until that point, it was always a cry out. You know, there's two things with self-harm. It's crying out to people, especially if it's visual and you're telling people you need help and crying out physically, or it's that inner pain that you're hurting yourself. I never cried out to someone, one, because I didn't know how to and didn't do it, which I probably advocate not to do now. But it was me punishing myself. And that was also a really hard time, because when you haven't got an outlet to tell people to get help, because you feel like you can't, again, it's a battle in your mind.
And if you had counseling with that, and if you kind of worked through some of, you just sorted it out yourself, you've just been running, right?
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, again, you know, the same thing of the power of our minds. We underestimate sometimes how powerful we actually are, because it's easy to regress into something that makes us perceived to be weak, or, you know, kind of go into a downward spiral, as opposed to fight, because fighting is really hard in a lot of people's minds, but we all have it in us. And so for me, I suppose I've just always kind of, how do I flick it? You know, what people forget is that when I was rock bottom, and you know, we all have a different rock bottom. Mine was, I want to jump in a hole and I don't want to see tomorrow. So it's pretty low. But on the same side of that, which is the hardest part, is I still had a dream. I was still at that time getting ready for a world championships. I was in holding camp for a world championships when I hit my rock bottom.
Yeah.
The thing that kept me going was, I'm not going to not go to the world championships. I'm not going to not run. And I stood on a rostrum. I got a silver medal at those world championships.
Yeah.
And no one knew that before that, the night before I was cutting myself, that I was crying, I was in tears, I still got it. That's the power of the mind. That helped me move on, not get over it, definitely not think that I'm suddenly okay.
Yeah.
It helped me find the inner fight that I needed to become an athlete, because the athlete bit was not in question. I wanted to be an athlete. The bit was in question is hating myself, did I like myself personally? What was happening? Was I getting, you know, I felt like I was being cursed. So on one side, it was all them things personally. And on the other side, it's like, I'm good enough.
But we all have that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, everybody has it. It's just a lot of people don't vocalize it. And I think you should write a book called Flip It or something around that.
I do need to do that.
Oh, I think that would be amazing, because flipping it is always a choice. You know, everyone has that battle, and it's which one is the one that, which one conquers. I'm always curious as to why one conquers more than the other. But look, let's just go to not Sydney. Let's go to Greece, right?
Yes.
So were you aware what everyone else was kind of thinking? Were you aware that people were kind of thinking it would be nice, but it's probably not going to happen because of what? Were you aware of that? Because I could almost, if I could feel, so if I was like an Indian chief and I could go like that and put my finger up, that I could feel that there was a wave of everyone thinking it's not going to happen. I can even remember the commentators kind of saying that, like, oh, it's nice she's here, but she's not going to win. Were you kind of aware of that? Did you read papers? Did you listen to people's opinions?
Yeah, I started, I suppose, over a couple of years. You know, I won a bronze in Sydney, but that was off of only 6 weeks of running. And then I started to win medals again. I was winning lots of medals, but it was almost like, you know, bridesmaid, never the bride type conversation. Everyone assumed and expected that I can win a medal, because I'd medaled at, even though I'd had 7 years of injury, I'd still medaled at nearly every championship I went to, but it was off a fight, you know, it was like everything. And I suppose what happened was, you know, people say to me, but how can you go from being depressed and having a breakdown and whatever to winning 2 gold medals? I said, because what you don't realize is I was winning those medals off of depression. I was winning those medals off of stress fracture, ruptured calves, operation to my stomach, glandular fever, tonsillitis. I was still winning medals. My opposition didn't go through all of that, and they're only just in front of me. So how can I not believe that I'm better than them? And that was what I always had in my head. I have to be better than you, because if I get in like so close, but my last bit of prep is, so that was it. The power of remembering what you've done before and giving yourself credit and patting yourself on your back, because people, when something goes wrong, think that the here and now is the only thing that you can judge yourself on, whereas actually if you've got to a point of being quite good at something, you've done all the work, you've done all the learning, you've done all the homework, you've done it all. I've done all that. I knew how to race, but my body kept letting me down. So I always had an inner belief, but fundamentally, to get where I got to in Athens was that I let my legs do the talk, and I never vocalized where I was at, because I'd gone through in 2003 with no one knowing. I'd had an inner power that no one knew about me, like an inner strength to keep going, like something that stopped me doing an inevitable. And no one knew about that. So in my world, that's power to me, to think.
It's obvious. If you think about it, it's obvious, isn't it? But I don't think it was obvious to anybody else apart from you.
Because no one knew what was going on. So the thing is, when I came out in 2004, do you know what people don't know is, how do you create that winning team around you? And how I created that winning team is to tell them that they've got to step up. They've got to believe in them as much as I believe in myself.
Yeah.
If you're doing a job, you've got to do it well. Otherwise, don't be on my team, because there's nothing now in my life that can make me feel bad about myself other than what I felt bad.
Yeah.
No one could put me down anymore. So people were writing me off. People were saying, "Oh, you're always the bride, never the bridesmaid. Oh, you're never going to win a medal," whatever. I had to just say, I don't care anymore, because actually, do you know what? Those words and those thoughts will never make me feel as bad as I feel about myself anyway. And then again, that was a mindset flip. That was a changing. So I got my team of people, physios that I'd been with before. I got my training partner, Anthony Whiteman, who had been a great runner, but he'd never won anything on the world stage because he messed around and didn't believe in himself enough. You know, I had a physio that was brilliant physio, but she worked in a university in Leeds. She was part of the British team. I had these people that trusted me. I trusted them, but I literally had to say, you've got to be like literally world class, because I know. And this was before they even knew what's happened to me in 2003. I said to him, if you keep me injury free, I'm going to win that Olympic Games. I just knew it. I just knew I could. It was my body letting me down, because I weighed up all the odds. I weighed up all the things of, I'm still here. I'm still fighting. I've won all these medals. No one's knowing all the journey, this thing, yet I've still won these bloody medals. I can't go any lower, so I can only go higher than what I've done. And higher was being number one in the world before, being in the top 3 in the world before, being, medalist. So that's a decision. And I'm not saying that for people comparing Olympic standard, but in anyone's world, weigh up the pros and cons. The cons, are things that either we've put in our way or situations that have stopped us or progressing. And the pros are always going to be the things that you've been through before, you've done before, that you've got the tick in the box, that you've done your education, you've done your learning, let's say. And what's stopping you now? Because what stopped somebody else being good in your industry? They just gave up on it. What's somebody being the best in their industry? Because they ain't given up.
Yeah. No, I remember, I mean, I watched the races this morning. I'd not seen them for a while. And I just, as having spoken and known Sally, there's been so many times I've watched her and cried, and I watched you this morning and I cried because I hadn't seen it for so long. And it represented to me in the 800. And guys, whether you like listening to this, watching this, whether you like athletics or not, just go and watch both of those races, because you were in last place in the 800. And you I think you started off strong. You looked like you were strong out the blocks, and then it seemed like you just slowed, and everyone else was stronger than you. And then I just remember just seeing you. Then when the bell went, you were still, I think you were in 7th place. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, it was just like you said, there was something inside you that just rose up that was far more powerful than anything. And it was beautiful to watch. Really, it was just such an amazing thing. And then, of course, what was that like for you when you crossed the line? How did you feel?
Well, I mean, obviously with the face.
Yeah. Shock,
because I'd never actually, my dream had always been to win the 1500 meters title.
Yeah.
That all the time. But I always knew I would medal in the 800, because actually that year going into it, I'd won every single 800 meter race that I'd run in internationally. And people forget kind of those things, when they just see the end result. But I'd lost every single 1500 meters, because every 1500 meter race I went into, in my head is like, I've got to win it. I was never in the zone. Whereas the 800 meters, I didn't put expectations on myself. I just used my experience to do what I did. And then, so when I crossed the line in the 800 meters, from a geeky point of view, the initial thing is, you've crossed the line, but then it was kind of like, you know, I could have won the 800 meters. But so people look at that. So from a technical point of view, it looks like I go off slow, but I'd had a strategy, because every part of what I trained for leading up to it was to run even pace running. So every single session that I had done in my build up to it was to run that way. So I never went too fast, I never went too slow, I never did a session and got faster in the last reps. It was always about pace judgment. So I just took that learning. So that's just like, you know, a bit of learning. I took that into the race. So I strategized beforehand and thought, to win a medal, you're going to have to run 1 minute 56 seconds, there or thereabouts. Why do I know that? Through history, through understanding my opposition, doing my homework. Simple as that, like you would in any job. Then I knew that the front runner, because I knew that all the people that had run, the front runner, Giles Mars-Clark, would go out to the front, and she generally runs the first 200 in about 25, 26 seconds. So that meant to sustain that pace, you're going to be running like a 152. That's not going to happen. So if I ran like 28, 29 seconds and evenly, I'll run the 156. So they're going off in 25, 26. I'm going off in 28, 29, 30 odd meters behind. Scariest position I've ever been in, I have to say. But by the time I'd got round to the 400 meters, I'd closed, even though I was at the back, I'd closed that gap. They've now gone from a 25, 26 to a 30 second, 31 second 200, and I've just maintained my pace. So I just maintain my pace. If anyone actually gets the breakdown, I can't remember exactly, there's only a few hundredths of a second in between each of my 400 splits. The hardest part of that race, psychologically, is running neck and neck with somebody at that level, because it's very easy, and I've done it in the past, to their aura, to start fighting against that kind of being someone there. But again, in training, I'd practice to relax. And I just took all of the training. How many times have you done something and you've got a plan and you get to the moment and you just change it because you didn't go, panic? I just didn't panic. And it's the first time, because the wider part of me was that I'm the fittest, strongest, and more confident I've been in 7 years. The first year in 7, I hadn't had injury. The first year that I just said, I can't do any more than what I've gone through.
Let it happen.
Let it be me. And that's what happened. I believe in fate as well, you know.
I think the fate is the fact that you dreamed it, you saw it, you just knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, the hardest thing is, you know, you have a cycle of 4 years, and in athletics terms, you never know when that 4 years is. But I can honestly say, you know, people say about visualization, it wasn't really something that was part of my strategy when I was younger or in sport, because it wasn't something that was really hot like it is now. But did I visualize myself or see myself win Olympic gold? Yes.
Yeah. So I was talking to Ronnie O'Sullivan earlier today, because he loves running. You know, he absolutely loves running.
I heard that.
And he loves running. He's actually very good at running, but it's the running that he loves, just that flow of just that, man. And he loves a lot of watching the Kenyans and the Africans running, just to see, because that's what I think we're designed to move. And you're always moving, aren't you? I think there's so much more to your story, but I would just encourage everyone to follow you, especially if they're some of the stuff that you're doing right now. Tell us about what you're doing in terms of people's well-being and health, because I know that you're a massive advocate of that. And tell us about that.
Yeah, so a few things. So I started a corporate app. It's called ELF, Employee Lifestyle and Fitness App. So I publicly do a lot of motivational speaking. And I realized that, you know, the responsibility of a corporate, especially in these big corporations, to look after the well-being and mindset of their employees is really important, especially through, you know, the situations we've been going through. And I just wanted to kind of empower the corporates to support their employees to get the most out of the employees. You know, at the end of the day, if it goes down to the bottom line, how are you going to achieve that? You have to work as a team, and you can be the biggest corporate in the world, but it's going to always be the people that are helping you get there, you know. And I take that mindset from my athletics. So that Outwork, and so I'm really trying to push that now, getting funding. So finding people on Clubhouse and trying to get funders, going through the whole strategy. You know, it's a new world. Tech is a new world to me. business in that way is a new world. Going out for funding is a new world. But I think anything's possible if you just adopt the same mindset of previous success, asking for people, working with people, interacting, and finding the best support team. And then on the other side of it, from a people point of view, I still love inspiring people to get the best out of themselves. So during lockdown, through my social media, Dame Kelly Holmes, I also started a fitness concept, which is about mindset and performance in fitness. And that was called Military Emotion. And that's brought a really beautiful community of people together who need help just driving themselves to do something positive in life. There's some people, you're very lucky because you're in that world, you've got that vision to help people and have the mindset. I'm very lucky because in my sport and high achiever, I have that. There's a lot of people in life that don't yet find their USP, don't yet find their inner fire or their burn. They've got it, but they just can't yet find it.
But that's what's driving you, isn't it? I can see it. You just want to help people find that for themselves.
Yeah, but it makes me grow as well,
Yeah, of course.
Because I learn so much about myself every day that I could ignore. I'm not, I never put myself and say, oh, I'm best at all of this, but I know I'm good at something. And that's the thing, is how do you do that in a meaningful way that doesn't put yourself like up on a pedestal, because that's not me, but it's really about, I want to make you better because this is what I've learned in my career.
So I got involved in sports psychology just simply because, well, I love sport. I absolutely love it. But I also wanted to look at all different sports and just actually see what is the mindset of all of these people. So I worked with the Kent cricket team in '99. Okay. So many athletes that I worked with: Mark Richardson, Ewan Thomas, Steve Backley, not Sally. I knew Roger. I met Roger Black. I met Sally through Roger, Marlon Devonish, Christian Malcolm.
Oh my God!
Marcia Edwards.
Marcia Richardson now.
Richardson, 100-meter runner.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! Blast of the past. They are those.
So that was because I met. He was such a great guy. The guy that trained them all. His group.
Oh yes. AO.
What?
Wasn't AO.
No, it was the one who looked after Marcia's group and Christian, and then he ended up working for Sky as well. I saw him the other. I can't.
Oh yes, what's his name?
It doesn't
matter. Cut this bit. But yeah, I know.
Yeah, cut this bit out. Well, he'll listen and he'll send me a message saying, "How could you forget me?" Yeah. But I always found that interesting, and especially for athletes who, weren't earning lots of money in many cases, but there was a lot of camaraderie. I knew Sally spent a lot of time around John Regis, Linford Christie, and that impact that it had on her. But listen, this is something I'm sorry?
It was a different world back then as well in sport. Generations change things, financial input change things. You got to remember the era you're talking about. A lot of people juggled jobs and their career, yet we're still successful. And I think that's something that people should always look at as well. When you're looking at a hero and when you're looking at an inspiration, it's like, look at a multitude of time and how things have changed, because those that have gone before, especially in sport, before or after sort of my era in the 90s and 80s, finance and opportunities allow you to do so much more. But true champions have also come from not having that, just come from grit and determination, which proves then that anyone can do anything.
So I remember interviewing Audley Harrison, and he was one of the first people I interviewed. Actually,
at one of my Olympics.
And him, the impact that he had in winning gold, right? The impact that had on British boxing, for all the likes of AJ and so many other people that followed. So what about you? What legacy do you think you have left so far on athletics in what you did?
I hope to think that it helped the UK go for the Olympics. We went for the bid after that. I think it brought a lot of presence and prominence in the UK. So I hope that I had a little bit of input in the inspiration of what the Olympics means. Having been the first female ever to win 2 gold medals at the same games. So I hope that had an input.
And what about winning in Greece? Come on, what was that like? Come on. Did that have any effect on you, do you think? Or even afterwards, just felt how...
Yeah, I mean, the Olympics, it started in Greece, Athens, it's the birthplace of the Olympic Games, and having someone, in my head, my heart, kind of the Olympic rings were so powerful growing up. So that was amazing. And then I suppose yeah, just the movement of what the Olympics brings is a powerful one, isn't it?
I thought you brought just so much joy into people's lives, and which was great. And hopefully for some people, they use that for their own inspiration rather than just looking at you and think that was great. And, you know, I was listening to someone's Dr. John DeMartini, who I know that you listened to the
Yeah,
other day.
yeah.
I'm doing a podcast with him. That
Okay.
guy is unreal. And
Yeah.
one of the things he said is, he said, what do you want the legacy of your life? He thought about his legacy in 1,000 years, not in. And that made me think, really, what impact do I want to leave
Yeah.
behind, which is the last question. But the word hero actually comes from the Greek word heros, which is the protector. So heroes protect. And that's to me what you represent, Kelly. You know, you want to protect others, but you want others to become heroes and protect and make
Yeah.
the world a better place. What do you want the legacy of your life to be in 1,000 years?
Oh my gosh.
You can always come back to me on that. But
Yeah. Can I come back to that? I haven't finished doing what I want to do yet. So let's talk about that in a
let's
couple
talk
of
about
years.
that in 40 years' time. Yes.
I mean, I feel like through understanding growth, through knowing that things will still have setbacks and barriers, but you can still grow. I feel like I grow every day. Like I can honestly say in the last 6 months, I probably learned even more about myself and understanding about who I am than I have in my whole career, just through circumstance, introduction to people, things I think about in my life. And I think there's nothing that can tell you not to keep learning. You know, I was never the best athlete in the world till I stood on top of the rostrum. I was number one in the world. I was fast as I'd done this, but I kept learning until that day, and I keep learning every day now.
Until you die. So
I've
how do people
come back with that? Yeah.
so how do people what's the best way for people to contact you? Instagram? What's your handle?
Yeah, so my handle's that Dame Kelly Holmes. My other handles, Military Emotion. And I have to just say, we didn't bring this in, is how do you have an impact on changing things in life? So remember I said to you about my PE teacher. So I started a charity in 2008 called the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust. And this is how I've used my name to make a difference, was because I never forget people. I never forget people that do something because they really mean it, you know, not because they want something out of you, not because, you know, they think if they attach your name. I just never forget somebody that really truly wants to help you. And my PE teacher, when she told me I could be good at something, she was a PE teacher, that was her job, but she actually wanted me to do something. I started my charity off of that because I wanted to help disadvantaged young people in areas of deprivation that felt like they had nothing in life. You know, my background was I grew up in a care home for the first 4 to 5 years. I'm a mixed race girl in a white county, didn't know my father, you know. Working class family, worked hard and started earning money myself by washing cars and cleaning windows just to get my own pocket money, you know, to buy my mum and dad a tumble dryer. I used all of I had £12 a week from a paper round. I used to use £10 a week to put it on to this down in Curry's. I want local Curry's in Tonbridge, £10 every week I'd put on there for 20 weeks to be able to buy this tumble dryer because I wanted them to feel good. I've always had an innate ability to want other people to feel good, but it comes from, if you can empower other people, it empowers you as well. If you can see change in other people and you've been instrumental in that change, that not only makes you feel good, but makes you then kind of think where you actually are in life. And I suppose that's maybe one of the legacies that I want to leave, is that, you know, I can empower people because I'm being empowered by others, and I can be empowered by people because I'm empowered people. It's that I want to help people get the best out of their lives. And going back to charity, we've helped over 400,000 young people from areas of deprivation, all because
of that PE teacher.
It's one person, I believe, that can make a difference. And our charity works with sports people, high world-class sports people who are transitioning their careers to find out who they are next, but have a unique ability to give, you know, to empower others. And I feel like that's one of my biggest achievements, is starting the charity from nothing, had no idea, helping 400,000 people and transitioning 750 athletes into new careers. If I can do that, then I can do anything as well, I believe.
Well, I'd love to, if I can ever help you with any of that. You know, my background, believe it or not, I was a PE teacher, and obviously worked with lots of athletes, but also lots of people who really struggled because when that thing ended, they didn't know who they were, you know,
Yeah.
and
Oh, there's
yeah.
so many stories. That's a whole new podcast we can do.
Oh,
I've been doing that since 2008, and the transition has been unreal. There was no one helping athletes back then transition, and you know, like I say, it's another conversation.
well, I
But
was with MTC, right? You know, with Jonathan Marks,
yeah,
and Colin Jackson and Jonathan Edwards. I mean, I couldn't believe, you know, Jonathan. But it makes sense, though, doesn't it? You do something every day for all of your life, and then you stop. It's going to be a challenge. But I just love the way that
that's
you're always
another
up.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, another podcast. I've done 3 with Ronnie O'Sullivan. I think I've done 3 with Karen Dark. So,
There we go. We'll
but
come back
thank you
for another
so much.
conversation.
I really, really, you know, this is something I've been waiting for a long time. And there was a part of me that maybe didn't think it was going to happen, but there was a part of me that always thought it was. So I can't wait for people to listen to this. Please reach out to Kelly and tell her what was your biggest takeaway. I know you love feedback, right?
Yeah,
Let
I think
her know, let me know, and take some positive action away from this. For me, it's all about flip it. And I hope one day you'll write a book, maybe that's something to do with that in some
something's
way, because
coming
you
out.
can
Something's
flip
gonna
it.
come.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Thank you.